What's up, fight fans? It is Monday, the 28th of August, 2017, and this is the Monday Morning Analyst here on MMAfighting.com. My name is Luke Thomas. I am the host of this podcast. I hope you're doing well. Man, what a week. What a week it was. I tweeted right after the John Jones news somewhere on Tuesday that MMA reporters were going to age in dog years over the course of the week, and that's exactly, well, not literally what happened, but it certainly feels that way. It was an insane week. I don't know how you guys felt at home in Vegas. It was something else. I just have to say I'm really thankful for everybody who had nice things to say about last week's MMA on Monday Morning Analyst. Big thanks, of course, to Stephen Wright and Dan Hardy and Paul Felder and Lamont Peterson and Barry Hunter and who am I leaving out here? Somebody. I don't know. Did I say Dan Hardy? I can't remember. I've barely gotten any sleep over the week, man. It was insane. But you guys were really supportive of last week and of those guys who helped out. And Randy Gibson. That's what I forgot. And I'm just really appreciative of it. So thank you so much. And I really feel that MMAfighting.com's coverage, if there was an angle out there to cover it, we basically hit it. So just trying to give you guys what you deserve, and I know you were appreciative, and we're very thankful of that. This week's a little bit different, too. Last week's didn't normally adhere to the way in which we do this podcast, which is I have 3 segments typically. Overview of the weekend. We take a look at something with multimedia in the second segment, and then look ahead at what's coming up in the third. We're really not going to do that today either. I got a lot of positive responses from my appearance on Brendan Schaub's Big Brown Breakdown podcast, and I mentioned something on there if you listened, which is sometimes in fights I see things and I don't really know what's happening, and I kind of just leave it alone. I really only like to talk about things where I feel like I have some expertise is a strong word, but some competent understanding of it. And even then, maybe that's debatable. But I try to limit the things I talk about to a narrower field for those concerns. And that's part of the reason why I didn't really do any analysis on last week's last week's podcast, because I don't know much about boxing. I'm not going to pretend that I do. And so I don't want to pretend that this week either. Now, with a little bit of time and a little bit of help, I could probably do something next week. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you want to see with multimedia some breakdown of Mayweather versus McGregor, let me know. Shoot me an email at just lukethomasnews@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. I'll do it if you want it. But for this week, I didn't get home till yesterday evening almost, and I hadn't. Man, I'm telling you, I got like 3 hours of sleep every night out there. It was crazy. It was crazy. I'm glad that there are smaller events coming up like UFC Rotterdam this weekend. I'm very happy. I'm glad to get back to normal, and I'm glad to get back to small scale events. Those big events are fun and they're interesting, but they're attacks, man. They're attacks. I haven't deadlifted, I swear to God, since June. If I just can't I don't have any time to get in the gym or stick to a program. So this is my last trip for a while. I'll probably go to the card in New York City, but that's it. I'm not traveling until the end of the year, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So in any case, let's get on with the fight. Mayweather versus McGregor. Of course, Mayweather wins. TKO, 10th round, stoppage. There were some discussions about the stoppage, about whether or not it was a little early. I don't believe that it was. That's not the same as saying McGregor was super badly concussed, as you heard him say afterwards. I was just tired. I was fatigued. I can believe that. That seems reasonable to me. But at the same time, if you're the referee, who I did not think did a good job overall, but if you're the referee and you're Robert Byrd and you're watching somebody, he was progressively looking more and more weary, and then in that 9th round was backing up the whole time, at least towards the end of it anyway. And then the 10th round, Mayweather picks up right where he left off, and you're just getting teed off on, and you're not responding. That's the key. You saw Nathan Cleverly. He was responding, and he was like bobbing and weaving to try and stay out of the way and keep his elbows close to his ribs to stay out of the way of the punches from Badu Jack, and that wasn't really working either, but he was trying these real evasive maneuvers. And we talked about this before the fight, and Brendan Gibson alluded to this on last week's MMA Analyst, which was that you have that, in the ring, the fighting surface is like this, in the octagon it's like that, which is why you see some guys in bad shapes, they'll duck under a punch and they'll just run across the octagon because you have space to do that. In a ring, you don't, man. Your movement has to be tight and crisp. Your defense has to be absolutely very narrow. Paulie Malignaggi, whatever you want to say about him, there were a couple things he was right about. And one of the things he noted on the broadcast, and I would say this, whatever you think about him on Twitter, I will give him credit. I thought on the broadcast itself, he was very, very fair. I didn't see a lot of complaints about his broadcast work. So, and he made a point. He made a point that, like, you know, there's, and I don't know what those are, but that there are ways to, if you're tired, to hold on, to stall. You know, you can stall in boxing in certain ways, and so, and McGregor didn't know those things. Which, how could you expect him to? It was his pro debut, you know. And so I had no problem with the stoppage. I feel like if you're just not going to respond, even if you're not hurt, the referee doesn't know that. The referee just sees you eating shots. He has to step in at some point if you're not protecting yourself, right? So I get it. I get both sides of the argument, but ultimately you got to side with the referee on this one. He's got to make a responsible call. If he sees that, it's not a big deal. A lot of folks being like, why can't they, you know, why doesn't he have to take a knee? You don't necessarily need to see that, you know. The knee is one way and if he wanted to, he could have taken a knee. And then they could have gotten a count. He would have had a chance to recompose himself. Just not much of one, you know. So, and then if you're the referee, you also know that's McGregor's pro boxing debut. That might make him a little bit even more eager to jump in. So that's what I have to say about the stoppage. As for the fight itself, let's sort of back up a step here. I have noticed something about the coverage after the fight, which has been very interesting to look at. If you talk to MMA fans and MMA media, they have a very positive response about what McGregor did. If you look at the boxing fans and the boxing media, they have a very positive response to what Floyd did. Right? Ultimately, believe he was superior in a number of capacities. And if you look at the media ahead of time who thought this was just a big scam and everyone was being tricked, then you look at what they're saying today, they're saying exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. In other words, everybody after the fight is looking at this fight as a way to confirm their worldview. Now, what does that say? It says they might all be onto something. A fight doesn't necessarily need to mean the same thing to everyone. And sometimes it can't, sometimes it won't, sometimes it shouldn't. This is one of those cases. Let's start with the MMA side. I absolutely believe that Conor McGregor overperformed relative to expectations. You know, there were guys out there on the most crazy end of things, like Max Kellerman, who I normally think very highly of. I do like Max Kellerman. But saying he won't land a glove on Mayweather, I mean, he hit him with a vicious uppercut that was beautifully timed. I mean, that was fantastic, you know? And I thought Conor McGregor had a jab going, and there was a lot to take from that. And he cleanly won rounds, too. We'll get to that scoring issue in just a moment, but he easily won 3, if not 4, if not 5 rounds, depending on your perspective. I think I had him winning 4, certainly the first 3 rounds, no doubt about it. But eventually, you know, skill takes over, and that's what it was. But let's sort of talk about just Conor for a moment. I absolutely believe, you know, not only did he overperform, but there's so much to like from this, you know. The thing that I don't see ever get mentioned in anyone's media that really needs to, we really need to say something about this in defense of Conor, is that, my goodness, man, the guy takes risks. You know, Floyd is 50-0 for a lot of reasons, and boxing is an inherently risky enterprise. But part of the reason why he's 50-0 is that he carefully selected the right fights at the right times, at least in the latter stages of his career, this one being one of them. You know, it was just never... I know Conor gets up there and he says these incredibly, you know... outrageous things. I'm going to knock him out in 1, 2 if the gloves are 8 ounces. If there's 10, I'll knock him out in 4. That was just never realistic, man. Even for a much smaller, older Floyd. It's just, there's way too much of a skills gap, man. Look how much veteran savvy. Even Conor told you how much composure, which comes from being a veteran in there, that Floyd Mayweather had. It was never realistic that he was going to win. Not impossible, but just not really realistic, you know? And I get that if you're a Conor McGregor fan, you really believed in him, and I'm not mad at you for it. No one else should be. But, you know, just speaking objectively, it just was a bridge too far. So in accepting that reality a little bit, asking him to do what he did, to stick his neck out there, to try something, to, as Mauro Ranallo, who by the way was excellent on the broadcast, to dare to be great, it's something special, man. It's something special. So many guys out there today want manicured records. They want to look a certain way. They want to be perceived a certain way. And certainly McGregor does to a certain, you know, an extent as well. But to take that kind of risk, to cross over into another sport, even if it's a little bit of delusion, it's a lot of gusto. It's a lot of just, you know, absolute self-belief, and I really admire that. This is what you want out of your combat athletes. You want talent? Of course. You want skills? Yes. You want big stakes? Not necessarily big stakes in the traditional sense in this one below, and some different ones. But you want guys to take risks, man. You want guys to put it on the line, and that is what he did. Floyd would never do what Conor did. He would never do that. He would never expose himself in that kind of way, and Conor fell short. But you know what? He does what combat athletes don't really do anymore, and that's go out there and absolutely put it on the line. And the fact that he got paid a bunch of money for it, you know, people want to say that's the reason why he did it. I don't believe that for 2 seconds. I believe he stuck his neck out there because he believed he's a martial artist. He believed he was going to win, and he made a good faith effort at doing it. What did I like tactically from him? I actually don't think the stance switching was all that impactful. I like that he tried it, but I don't know that it made that much of a difference in the end, mostly because it was quick and it was tricky. But when Floyd said the stance switching drains him of energy, I think we all thought stance switching is something like, okay, we're pulling off, now I'm going to switch. You know, jab, jab, switch, like that. Where it's like the Luan Chaga style of stance switching. That is not very taxing, but to do it at the end of a combination very quickly, you know, you're switching your balance, that can be. That can be. And so I don't know that ultimately it was that effective in the end, but I made this point before. I like that he wasn't trying something traditional. I like that he was trying something completely off the beaten path, because that was going to be his way to victory, one way or the other. So I appreciate that he tried it, even if ultimately it wasn't necessarily all that successful. Remember, people will try something and they could get totally lucky with it, and everyone will call them a genius. Or they could be absolutely right about something but fail to execute, and everyone will call them an idiot. It's not that simple. Did it work in the end? Not to great effect. But do I appreciate them strategizing around it? 100%. I will give credit to Coach Owen Roddy for coming up with that. I think, at least in theory, given what they knew, that was probably the right thing to do. I will say what I really appreciated most from Conor was the use of the jab, and you heard Al Bernstein say a number of things about it positive. That's not something he's ever really used in MMA. He's used kicks, teeps, turning kicks, spin kicks to back guys up to steer them a direction, and then he bangs on them with the left. And this time, he really had to find a way to get in Floyd's face with it and use it 2 different ways. Sometimes it was pawing. Sometimes it was just even lighter pawing, just measuring. Sometimes he was trying to stick it to him, and sometimes it scored real nicely. I thought one of the things that was also interesting from Conor was that at least early on, his anticipatory skills clearly had Floyd on the defensive. That uppercut we talked about, he wasn't expecting to eat that uppercut. Now, he worked his way around it, which we'll get to Floyd in a second. But early on, and MMA fighters better pay attention to this too. Eddie Alvarez didn't learn this lesson. Early on, Conor McGregor's movement recognition, accuracy, and timing is impeccable. He caught Floyd clean with that uppercut. Clean. And I also thought, to his point, he had a good strategy for for Floyd when he was on the ropes. You're not going to hit the head. Floyd's just so hard to touch there, but you can light him up to the body, and that was really, really great. So I really took those things away from it. I felt like the jab is something he can bring back to MMA that he didn't have before. I'm sure some of his other skills that we don't really know about were pretty good. He had a decent right hook a couple times. Again, in close proximity. Again, how easily that will translate, I don't know. It'll be hard to say. And I just admire his guts to go out there and put it on him. You know, absolutely fearlessly. Go out there. Did he look intimidated in any way in that fight? Especially early on? Not to me. Not to me. So there were a couple more things I would want to look at. I did think also some of the underhooking he was doing to prevent Floyd's turning and then to press into him. I thought that was good. I appreciated that he was trying some of the rabbit punches. And you're going to say, well, why would you appreciate that? You're not supposed to be doing that. Remember, we said before this, he's going to have to skirt that line, and it's up to the referee to do something about it. Robert Byrd, and I talked about this on my pre-fight or my post-fight show special on my own YouTube channel, was never really in a great position to do a whole lot. So I don't think he saw much, but it's up to him to control this bout, and he didn't really do a good job of that. So Conor was up there skirting the line. Were they all that effective in the end? I don't know. I tried to go back and see a replay of that 9th round uppercut that apparently hurt Floyd to the body. I have not seen another angle of it, so it's hard to tell if it was to the body or to the groin. Floyd complained it was to the groin. Hard to know. Hard to know. But I think the real lesson there is Conor did show some use of weaponry. Conor had a couple of moments that were interesting. He had Floyd very much on the defensive early. He made some bad errors too. I don't know what his issue is with energy management. People have said, is it a psychological issue? Is it a training issue? Is it a diet issue? You know, he had a good dietitian and nutritionist in George Lockhart. I am certain he trained his ass off for this contest. I don't know what it is. It might be a skill he can't overcome, or a challenge, rather, that he can't overcome. I don't know what the answer is, because you've seen it in 2 Diaz fights. Now, he came back in that 4th round and that second Diaz fight, to me, one of his better moments really in his athletic career. But, you know, he does fade towards the middle of fights, and maybe he gets that 5th round return to action. That's why he wanted referee Robert Byrd to let him go. But, again, if you're just taking shots, the referee has a responsibility to step in there. But that's going to be something he needs to worry about, because if you're an MMA fighter and you're looking at this, you're saying to yourself, okay, first, second round, this guy's a nightmare. He's an absolute nightmare. I need to do everything to avoid any kind of punching with him, any kind of striking with him. I need to lock up and wear on his arms and just do nothing else, like Demi and Maya style, you know. Do nothing except wear on him. Because he's so good up front, and I'm not saying he's a front runner, because I do think there's an argument to be made he does come back, but he clearly has a dip in the middle, and there's a significant drop-off from the beginning to that middle part, and that's going to be something he needs to work on. And he acknowledged as much, you know, in the course of that contest. He said after the fight, it just keeps happening. I'm not sure why. I don't know what the answer is either. Folks have asked me. I am not a kinesiologist or a physiologist. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it's something that he absolutely needs to work on, because folks are going to adapt to that. You know, if you fight in the first 13 seconds, ask Jose Aldo how good he is. You know, in the first 2 rounds, ask Eddie Alvarez how good he is. He's a nightmare. He's a total nightmare. In the first 3 rounds, ask Floyd Mayweather how good he is, right? But there's that pocket where he's going to have some problems if he doesn't find a way to resolve that. And whether that's efficiency and economy of motion, you know, I talked in my post-fight special that MMA is so offensive, guys will just throw a little bit more sometimes, or throw heavier, or just sort of get into more physical contact, because defense is not as much of the game, and offense is a significantly more pronounced part of the game. So there's a little bit of that too. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on, is the short answer. As for Floyd, look, you got to give Floyd credit too, man. You really do. I said this whole time you need to watch out, because Floyd's a bit of a con artist, and in some way I think that's still a little bit relevant. I mean, he did pick in his 50th fight somebody with no pro boxing experience. I think he thought, even if I've been on the decline, I can probably work my way around this, and if that's what he thought, he was right, you know. But I will say this, he kept his word, did he not? He said he was going to knock Conor McGregor out, and he stopped him. Did he not? He did. You know, whatever you think about Floyd as a person, I said this on Brendan Schaub's podcast, that is Darth Vader, man. And when he starts swinging the lightsaber, people get cut to pieces. You know, he is a very, very, his IQ is insane. He is so smart in there, his fight IQ. My goodness. He has such a ridiculous sense of distance and a way to manage that. It's amazing. Even against the ropes, you saw Conor pulling the guard down. He would be just out of the way of the cross. There's a moment there where you can actually see him where Conor jabs and Floyd walks forward just slowly enough where the jab stops right here. I mean, it's amazing to watch, and to see him be, you know, not throw a whole lot early. And people are like, why didn't he throw a whole lot early? MMA side will tell you, but here's my view. Boxing will tell you Floyd didn't because he just wanted Conor to wear himself out, like he was just killing time. My thought is he actually would have thrown more if he thought he could have landed, but I think Conor's awkwardness shut him down a little bit. I think he purposely said, I was expecting to throw more than this. I'm going to be a lot more careful than I am now. And then once he slowly got around to things, you know, he decided to open up. Yes, it was part of his game plan to be slow early. I don't think it was part of his game plan to be that slow. I think he was really very much, you know, he had bigger eyes because of what Conor was doing. He was following the game plan. I think he was following it very, very rigidly, given what he saw. But I mean, Barry Hunter talked about it last week on the MMA Analyst, did he not? He said, Floyd has a game plan, and it doesn't matter what happens. He sticks to it. Barry Hunter said it last week. Conor McGregor said it on Saturday night. He stuck to the game plan. His ability to make reads and adjustments is incredible. His reflexes are incredible, especially because it was all from slips, recognition of distance, and trunk movement. His legs are gone. He's not nearly on the balls of his feet like he used to be at all. And so for him to have that kind of command, especially by rounds 4 through, let's say, 7 of distance, and to get it right is very, very impressive, man. I'm telling you, this guy, We all want to hate on Floyd, and if you want to hate on Floyd as a person, I'm not here to stop you, man, but you cannot let that cloud your judgment about who he is as a boxer. He is incredible as a talent. To see what he can do, and did you see him reserve his energy all the way through? That's a 40-year-old man in there, and he was not breathing hard by that 10th round. Conor McGregor could barely keep his hands up. And again, that might be some issue that Conor can correct. I'm just pointing out, Floyd's got experience. He's got IQ, ring savvy, experience. He knows every inch of that ring, how to react to things, where to be, what to do, while reading you, and then slowly taking away the things you do. And then for him to march Conor down, number one, I think that opened up the fight and made it better for all of us as viewers. And number two, you need to acknowledge what that means. That he didn't walk down Canelo. He didn't walk down De La Hoya. He didn't walk down Maidana. He didn't walk down Cotto. I think there's an argument to be made. Does Conor McGregor have punching power? Of course he does. We have borne witness to it. Is it a little bit has it been turned into some kind of mystical power that maybe not, it doesn't exist quite like we thought it does? At least insofar as boxing is concerned, there's no doubt about it. You don't walk down someone like that whose punching power you're deathly afraid of. You don't walk down somebody like that who you feel like is just going to be, one shot and they'll just turn the lights out. And you could say, well, look, what happened in MMA? Why couldn't do it in boxing? I think a couple of things. I think Conor McGregor has very, very good power. I don't think he has blinding power. And the reason why he's able to get knockouts is because, one, I think his timing is amazing. Go look at the Aldo fight, eyes downfield, and just connects exactly where he's looking, whereas Aldo was kind of coming in recklessly. He's got excellent vision, Conor McGregor does. And I just feel like the combination of the small gloves, it is powerful. He's got excellent timing and accuracy, and then he just sort of puts guys away with it. But he doesn't have this one-shot, bang power all the time. Most of the stoppages are this accumulation where he just really stuns them and then kind of figures it out from there. Whether it's, let's say, the Brandao fight or the Alvarez fight, something like that. Poirier fight was legal, but it was a little bit to the back of the head. Aldo fight, it's just a bigger guy with a big punch landing it on a guy who was being reckless. Again, I'm not here to take away from Conor. In fact, I think I'm adding things to Conor. To say it's just power is not fair to McGregor, right? He is scoring because, yes, he has power plus other things. But in boxing, when you're dealing with a master tactician in Floyd Mayweather, who's got masterful defense, knows exactly where he needs to be, knows exactly where to put his hands, once you get tired, you don't sit on your punches all the right way. You don't balance yourself all the right way. He's just going to walk right through it. And he walked Conor McGregor down and TKO'd him. And to go from, as Conor put it, fighting on the outside, I don't think he liked any of that. Floyd was very much realizing you can't fight this guy out here. So let me see what happens when I bring him to me on the ropes. What if I can duck and dodge there like he did against Cotto? We could watch the Cotto fight. A lot of that was spent on the ropes too. And then what he figured out was, he goes, you heard Conor say, I turned him into a Mexican. What does that mean? A lot of these European fighters fight like Conor does, sort of a wide, almost, former like bare knuckle stance. That's not fair to him. I'm just saying it's a little more wide open. But a lot of these Latin fighters are inside fighters, elbows to the ribs, and they're in a phone booth just digging on each other. And then there's a science to how you block and when you punch and what the shot selection is. It's something that doesn't really exist in MMA because of the throw, the takedown, or the clinch, or the knee, or something like that. It's something very exclusive to boxing. This is the inexperience that Conor was facing. This is my point. How are you going to beat a guy who, through the amateur system and the professional system, for almost 30 years has been boxing people like that? It's just not possible, or at least not realistic. Floyd has seen all those styles before and has answered them all before. So, of course, it was going to be the inevitability. And he was inside that range. It was amazing. At first, Conor was tying up and digging underhooks to prevent the turn a little bit so he could face him and then push off and get right back at range. And then what did you see? You saw, when he got tired, you saw Conor reaching and then Floyd framing, getting the elbow, almost what Holly Holm did on Ronda Rousey, getting that elbow right across the throat, opposite shoulder, on the inside shoulder, on the body, almost like he's playing guard and he was under inside control. That inside space is crucial. He would get it and push off and then go right back after him, man. And you could see him even like winding up, throwing a left, seeing Conor even so fatigued go this way, so then Floyd would bang him out with the other hand. It was, incredible shot selection, and I appreciate he kept his word, He did. He went out there and said he was going to finish him, and that's exactly what he did. Now, he said KO. He didn't exactly KO him, but I mean, it's a bit of a nitpick at this point. I'm very impressed with what Floyd Mayweather was able to accomplish in that contest, although I do think he needs to retire because his legs are shot, and while he's got a lot of other tools, and maybe he could still beat some guys, the end is near for him physically in a complete way, and I think he realizes that and needs to make some changes. So in the end, I'm glad it happened, I guess. I'm glad we got to finally see this. What we thought was going to happen basically did. I go back to the Rory McDonald example with Metamoris, where, early on he was getting a bad spot, underhook, stand up. And JT Torres didn't know what to do with that at first. How do I keep a guy from standing up who's bigger and stronger and has that one skill set of getting up so down pat, and then eventually he figured it out. It's the same thing with Floyd. Floyd came out there and saw this guy awkwardly, paw jab, uppercut, turning an angle, switching stances at range. Was like, oof, I don't want anything to do with that. Let me figure this out. Okay, let me try against the ropes. That's working okay, not great. And he didn't do that for very long. Conor made it sound like it was sort of these 3 stages. I'd say it's more like 2 stages, 1.5 stage. But then eventually, that was really the trick, was when he came in like this, and it's a science. Do you hold the glove here? Do you hold it 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 here? How far are the elbows? How much are you bent over? How much are you looking up? How much are you upright? Is the chest up? I mean, this is all a delicate, that's why they call it a science, y'all. It's a delicate balance and fine-tuning. In MMA, we have so many weapons and so many variables. You don't really get that fine-tuning of, is the glove here? Is the glove here? Where does it go? What do I punch next? Floyd's got all that down, man. But at the same time, Floyd doesn't have the courage, I don't think, of someone like Conor McGregor. He would never, as courageous as he is, I'm not trying to hate on Floyd as a competitor, but as courageous as he might be, to go to another person's sport and take on their, this generation's best, even if he's a faded version of himself, is amazing. And people say, well, how can you say it's a faded version and give Conor compliments? Because the faded version of Floyd is still a bad motherfucker, man. That is clearly a very talented boxer, It just wasn't realistic. The only thing I saw John Danaher, I could be misquoting this, I saw something he said being like, he agreed that, it just wasn't realistic that Conor was ever going to win, but that, this shows an MMA fighter in boxing does better than a boxer and MMA fighter. I mean, yes, of course. I just don't know what that's supposed to mean, because they don't train anything else. We actually, or MMA fighters, not me, MMA fighters actually train boxing, so of course they would be better at it. They just won't be as good. We're not as, on the MMA side, we're not as good as BJJ, pure practitioners, but, we train BJJ, so we're partly as good. I don't understand what that's supposed to mean, but I do agree that, for Conor to do as well as he did, given how uphill it was, if you thought he was going to go in and knock him out, I just don't feel like that was realistic. But if you thought, hey man, let's see what this guy can do, let's take a step back, let's see if he can make those first 4 to 6 rounds interesting. And that's exactly what he did. And I really commend him for it, not merely for the guts, but for some of the skills he showed, landing some big punches on Floyd. I know there was an argument, well, he landed more punches than some of these other guys. I respect that he had that output, but those other guys didn't get walked down, and Mosley almost stopped him, nearly. I mean, sort of. He hurt him real bad. I don't know that Floyd was ever in a ton of danger. Floyd was so defensive early, he couldn't have been in danger, right? He was so protected and so not giving anything back, he couldn't have been in danger. But I think in the end, I'm very respectful of what he was able to turn in, and that's just equally true for Conor McGregor. So in the end, I think boxing got what they needed. I think MMA got what they needed. And the haters even got what they needed. The critics who thought this was all a sham. Everyone's going to see a little bit of what they want to see. And I guess that means everyone is seeing at least something that's there, So I take my hat off to Conor McGregor. I take my other hat off as a competitor to Floyd Mayweather. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you want to see a bigger breakdown, I can get you one. But I don't want to talk about things I don't know about in a way that I'm pretending to be something I'm not. I'm not an expert in MMA. And I am definitely even much less than that in boxing, but I hope some of this perspective is at least mildly interesting to you. And if you want to see more, LukeThomasNews@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Luke Thomas News on Facebook and Instagram as well. Before we go, let's take a look at UFC Rotterdam, which is coming up next week. We'll take a look at that fight card. Volkov versus Struve. This will take place on 2nd September in the Ahoy Rotterdam venue in Rotterdam, Netherlands. On your main card, you have Alexander Volkov taking on Stefan Struve. Where's this editing? I think this might be on Fight Pass. I have to check. Marion Renault taking on Talita de Oliveira. CR Bahadurzada is back, taking on Rob Wilkinson. Leon Edwards versus Brian Barberina. Then on Fight Pass. Yes, this is a Fight Pass card. Darren Till is back versus Bojan Velikovic. Marbek Taisimov is back against Felipe Silva. Michel Prazeres versus Mads Burnell. Rustam Habilov is back against Desmond Green. Francimar Barbosa taking on Alexander Rakic. And then Bohan Milojevic, another one or something, taking on Abdul Karim Edilov. All right. And there might be some other ones on here as well. Andrew Holberg versus Thibaut Gouti. And then Zabit Magomed Sharapov. That's the dude who Mark Henry says is amazing. Versus Mike Santiago. Okay, you guys know how to reach me. You guys know what I want. I hope you enjoyed last week's MMA Analyst. I'll give you a bigger preview if you're a little bit... if you wait, I just don't want to force one that I know I can't produce all that well. And, yeah, what a week. I'm exhausted. I'm sure you are as well. But hopefully things get back to normal here pretty soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, enjoy the fights.